Afternoon. In case you think our government has been extremely busy with the matter of the lockdown, I think it's important to point out that over the last several weeks, several months, the government has been very busy indeed under the cover of darkness, introducing perhaps the most radical agenda that the state has ever witnessed. We're all aware, of course, of the legislation that has been introduced. Under the guise of lockdown, Ireland has had the most lengthy and the most extreme lockdown of any European country. It is the only country in Europe at the moment where public worship is still prohibited. We're all aware of the shameful scenes that have taken place recently in Catholic churches where An Garda Síochána have been used to intervene in a way never seen before in religious ceremonies. Under the guise of public safety, public protest has effectively been banned. There is now a proposal to prevent people who have been vaccinated from visiting the houses of people who have not been vaccinated, and vice versa. This effectively represents a coercive type of healthcare, of a type which we had never witnessed before in this country. There are very few countries who have ever witnessed that before. None of this is justified by any kind of a balanced or rational analysis on the impact that it will have, and we really have to question whether our government has gotten so used to the abuse of power that it's getting rather fond of it, and it's going to continue to do so. So apart altogether from the lockdown, there are many other very radical matters which the government are bringing before us. In the area of immigration, there recently was an announcement that 17,000 people, that's probably a conservative estimate, who have entered this country illegally are to be given full citizenship under a type of amnesty. I have no doubt whatever that this will be the first of many such amnesties. And we really have to question whether giving 17,000 people who have broken our laws and entered the state illegally should be rewarded for doing so. We have to question the nature of the pull factor that this will create for further illegal immigration into this country. We already have some 17% of the population living in this country who are from abroad. It's a very, very high proportion. It has a potential to destabilize the country into the future. We're rewarding those who have broken our laws as well as rewarding those employers who have given them employment. And we should remember that the great majority of the people that we're talking about are people who are on lower-paid employment, service employment, employment such as pubs and restaurants and so on and so forth. And this will have a very serious effect on the potential of low-paid Irish people to secure employment. We must also bear in mind the effect that this has on our housing crisis. A study some months ago found that some 27% of people on the housing list in Ireland were waiting for 7 years or more. And yet the recent proposal by the government to adjust the direct provision system means that any person taken out of direct provision must be guaranteed housing within 4 months. We really wonder how we can manage that while we're in the middle of a housing crisis. In regard to climate change, the government has also introduced, again, the most radical policies of any modern European state with an effort to, or proposal rather, to reduce our carbon emissions by 51% over the next 9 years. This is going to have a ruinous impact on rural Ireland and the lives not just of rural people but of people throughout the country in terms of increased energy tax, increased heating tax costs and so on and so forth. And there is no justification whatever for this. This is being done purely on the basis of ideology and not on the basis of an impact it will have on the climate. At the same time as Europe and Ireland are dramatically attacking their own economies, not just through the lockdown, but through these carbon measures. China is massively expanding, the biggest economy in the world is massively expanding its production of coal and carbon. And of course, when the time comes and Europe's economy lies in ruins, do you seriously think that the Chinese government are going to say, right, it's now our turn, we're going to change our methods of production? You can forget it. The other very dreadful piece of legislation which is coming on the tracks at us is of course the hate speech legislation. Our party has made submissions on that. What that legislation means for each and every one of us is that if any person who belongs to one of the privileged minority groups in society perceives that something that you or I have said is offensive, then they can have a claim against you, they can suggest that what you've done is a matter of hate speech, and if you are punished, it will be treated as an aggravated crime. There's no objective standard whatever to assessment of what constitutes hate speech as far as I can see under the legislation. It is simply a matter of the perception of the person who claims to be offended. Under the description of hate speech, we find the term an ill-informed opinion. If you express an opinion about one of the protected categories and it transpires later that it's an ill-informed opinion, this may be sufficient to have you accused of an aggravated crime under the hate speech legislation. We really wonder how government can propose such a radical series of changes to our society at a time when they're supposed to be very busy. But the reality is that given that they have effectively outlawed protest, they're able to get away with this. In the normal course of events, people would be up in arms over much of this legislation, but in the absence of protest, government can convince itself that it's doing the right thing. Protest has been banned under the guise of public health. In our Dáil at the moment, we effectively have no opposition. On the one hand, you have a highly radical Marxist party, the Green Party, attached to two parties which traditionally have hated each other, and neither of whom seems to believe in very much. The only opposition is actually worse. It is even more to the left than the Greens, and they're egging the government on to even more extreme positions than the ones that they're taking. We have very little doubt that if the main opposition party, Sinn Féin, are ever elected, we may never see free and fair elections in this country again. When you look at the manner in which they have been using social media to, who knows what, perhaps manipulate public opinion, do we have any doubt that this will continue if they ever get into government? Do we have any doubt that a party which is still said to have significant ties to a paramilitary organisation, do you have any doubt that they will allow free and fair elections in our democracy ever again? We have come perhaps over many years to rely too much on the courts, and we still hold out certain hopes that the courts may yet protect us from the egregious overreach of government. There are certain court cases going through the courts, but they seem to be taking a great deal of time. And we really wonder, does the court system fully understand the nature of the attack that is being made against our democratic structures at the moment? Can the courts legitimately accept that our government continues to enjoy a democratic mandate or indeed a democratic legitimacy when they have effectively outlawed public protest? In the normal course of events, the issues of which I've spoken would be a matter of significant public protest and significant public concern. Given the fact that they're not, that protest is not available to people, you really must question the right of government to govern on these particular matters. At a time when protest is prohibited, should they be enacting such a radically dramatic and transformative series of policies? It is clear we have very limited time when we go before the court systems to effect change. And if the courts do not understand the importance of the court's cases that have been brought before them and are continually kicking them to touch while people are denied their freedoms, then it appears to me that they're accepting the word of the government that because of the situation that prevails, the common good dictates that our rights and our liberties do not hold up. And if we continue to accept this notion that a very spurious notion of the common good can be used to override civil and religious liberty, then the reality is we do not have a constitution. And we do not have the protection that the Constitution is supposed to guarantee us. And we are subject to the whims of whatever political group seem to be in power at any one time. As I've said, bad and all as the present group of politicians are, the main opposition, Sinn Féin, are likely to be far, far worse. So it's not a very pleasant prospect that we face, but elections are coming. There is a by-election which is going to be held before the end of the year in Dublin Bay South. And I would urge people to come out and vote on that and make your very serious concerns about the radical transformative agenda which is being pursued by a government at a time when public protest is prohibited. Make your feelings felt on that and to vote for a party such as our party, the Irish Freedom Party. This has been Michael Leahy, Chairman of the Irish Freedom Party. Thank you for listening.